Hi, everyone.
Hi, Councilmember. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Sergeant Rodriguez. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of
We
course.
haven't seen you in a while. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great to be invited. Thank you again for inviting us. Always good to see you. Yeah,
well, thank you for joining us. And for folks who've joined us, we're just going to wait a couple of minutes because we're a little bit early. I jumped the gun in admitting you all early. So we'll just say our hellos. And actually, Sergeant Rodriguez, is Officer Hartley also going to join us, or is he unavailable?
he may be joining us in a little bit.
Okay. Okay, I will definitely look out to admit him.
Yeah, he should be popping on here momentarily.
Okay, great. And just a friendly reminder to everyone, if you can just mute yourself. And we'll get started in 1 minute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I don't know if you can see me or not. That's I Zoom all the time. This is Carl Brodsky from the Tile Shop.
Oh, hi there. We're all just logging in, and I'm going to start with some brief remarks, and then we will open this up to an open discussion and Q&A. And why don't we go ahead and get started, because I see it's 5:30. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. As I think many of you already know, my name is Rashi Kesarwani. I am the City Council member for District 1, which is north of University Avenue, all the way to the Albany border, and west of MLK. So it does include the Gilman District and much of West Berkeley, north of University Avenue. And I'm joined this evening by my aide, Beth Gerstein. She's going to do her best to keep track of the order of hands raised once we get to the Q&A portion. And you should also feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we will try to monitor that and try to pick up on common themes and questions and try to answer those. Just give me a moment. I want to admit a number of folks who just joined. Okay. And you all can see my screen?
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Okay. Okay. And I'll do my best to keep admitting folks. So I wanted to just take a few moments at the outset to give you this presentation. I don't want to take more than 10 minutes. I'll try to do it in less time than that, just to level set on what the city's encampment policy is, tell you about what the city has been doing to manage RV parking. And then I want to tell you about one of our long-term strategies to build political power and also investment in the Gilman District. And then I'm happy to have a back and forth and a Q&A. I want to take a moment to just acknowledge that we have Sergeant Rodriguez from the Berkeley Police Department who is here with us. Sergeant Rodriguez, you want to say just a quick hello?
Hi, everyone. It's good to see most of you. It's been quite a while. As many of you may or may not know, I'm the supervisor of our Community Services Bureau, which is for police officers, or what we call area coordinators, who are responsible for a lot of the long-term problem solving. Many of them you've often seen out on the Harrison corridor, accompanying public works on encampment cleanups and things of that sort. I've been with the police department. I've been a police officer for about 17 years, and I'm also a UC Berkeley graduate. So thank you for having me, council member, and look forward to answering all your questions.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Rodriguez. And for the folks who just joined us, just a friendly reminder to mute yourself. And so let me just get into this presentation, if I can advance my slides. So first, I just want to start by acknowledging what we all know, that the current street conditions in the Gilman District are not acceptable. I wanted to show you some of these before and after pictures that were taken by our city staff. They conducted a deep cleaning of the Harrison corridor last week. Their goal was to clear the vehicular lane of all objects. And so you can see some of our workers doing that here. But I do want to acknowledge what we can see even in these after photos, which is that many of the sidewalks in the Gilman District do remain impassable. And the reality is that that is not in compliance with our city's sidewalk ordinance, which I'm going to explain a little bit more. So I just want to acknowledge that this is not what we want to see here. We want to make sure that our sidewalks are clean, they are passable for everybody. And so we have a lot of work to do to get to that. So how are we going to get there? I want to just go over, what is the city's encampment policy? The city of Berkeley strives to provide services, supports, and shelter to individuals who are homeless, while mitigating the negative impacts on neighborhoods and commercial districts. We do have a sidewalk ordinance that was passed, I believe, in 2015. And this essentially says that the sidewalk needs to remain passable for all users. And the way that the city tries to gain compliance with this ordinance is by asking people to consolidate their belongings into a 9 square foot area. If folks can mute themselves, that'd be great. So that's what we have. We know we are having challenges with this ordinance in the Gilman District. I also want to acknowledge a couple of emerging issues. As we all know, we are still going through a pandemic, and CDC guidance during the pandemic has been that unsheltered individuals who are in outdoor settings, that there can be a benefit to that in terms of keeping people safe from the virus relative to a congregate indoor setting. So at the beginning of the pandemic, when we did not have vaccines at all, and we were going through shelter in place orders, the city was really following the CDC guidance to essentially allow outdoor encampments, because it was seen as the safest thing to do, during the depths of the pandemic. And I'm sorry to say that we are currently in a major surge, but the difference now is that we do have the wide availability of vaccines. The other thing I just want to note here is the complex and shifting legal landscape. Our city attorney advised me for the presentation this evening that recent court decisions have created potential obligations on cities to provide alternative shelter in order to enforce ordinances that place limits on sheltering in public areas. And according to what our city attorney has advised, it's considered cruel and unusual punishment to criminalize unavoidable behavior that stems from the status of being homeless. So because of this legal landscape, our city's homeless response team does have to take a very methodical approach when they are addressing encampments. So they exercise due process protections for folks by making offers to remove debris, which is what you saw in the photos in the last slide. seeking voluntary compliance with the sidewalk ordinance, and making shelter offers when an encampment is ultimately closed because of health and safety risks. And I just want to state very clearly that the encampments in the Gilman District are considered a health and safety concern. And I know this is small text here, but I do want to highlight that the head of our homeless response team has told me in a meeting last week that the Gilman District encampments are the top priority. Folks can mute themselves, but these encampments are the top priority for the homeless response team. So it's going to take some due process time, but I hope that we are going to see, my goal is to see these sidewalks be passable. And that is what our homeless response team is working towards. I don't have the exact timeline to share with you, but that is the priority right now. So let me quickly touch on 2 other topics and then we will open it up. So obviously, as we all know, the encampments are not the only issue in our Gilman district. We also have a challenge with folks who are sheltering in an RV and they are on the public right-of-way for extended periods of time. So I just want to go over for folks that the city of Berkeley has developed and executed a plan that really the bulk of it occurred last fall to better manage the high concentration of RVs in the Gilman district. It started with outreaching to RV dwellers, opening the safe RV parking lot on Grayson Street that has capacity for up to 40 RVs. It currently has about 25 folks who are staying there. And then the final thing that was important for us to do was to put in place 4-hour parking limits on certain streets to encourage people to not stay in one place too long, so that we could see some turnover and there could be some relief for the Gilman district area, which has been an area with a high concentration of RVs. I do want to note that the city was served with a lawsuit in November 2021 by the RV dwellers. And so our city attorney's office is reviewing that and responding to that. And we will know what the status of that is very soon. For now, we are enforcing the 4-hour time limits in the Gilman district and continuing to make the offers of a space at the Grayson Safe RV parking lot. Okay, thank you for letting me get through this. Okay, so this is really my last substantive slide. I wanted to share with you what we are looking towards long-term for the Gilman district. You know, we want to address the day-to-day challenges, but we also want to make sure that we are looking ahead to beautifying this area, marketing it as a destination, and reinvesting in the area. So I have put forward a council item that the council will consider next Tuesday, and we wanted to share it with you so we could get your feedback on this, to basically do the planning work to develop a parking benefits district for the Gilman area. And you may be wondering, well, what's a parking benefits district? You may have heard of a business improvement district, and it is similar to a business improvement district concept. The idea is that we would look for areas in the district that have a demand for paid parking. And that could take some time to develop that demand. But once we have that, we want to make sure that whatever parking revenues are being earned by the Gilman district, that we can reinvest net parking revenues back into this area through things like sidewalk cleaning, enhanced lighting, beautification, whatever community stakeholders are interested in could be a potential investment in this area through the net parking revenue. And decisions would be led by a community advisory board comprised of local stakeholders. So that would be probably some of the folks on this call who could recommend how to spend the parking revenue. And also, I think, you know, that community advisory board would have a stronger political voice so that you can be in a position to effectively lobby the city on behalf of the district. Because I have noticed that other areas of the city that have a business improvement district have the ability to lobby very effectively to get their needs met. So I want to make sure that the Gilman district also gets that that ability to flex its lobbying voice. And I do want to note for folks who have employees who might be concerned about the prospect of charging for parking, that this would start very slowly. You know, we might just do a block at a time over several years, and that we would look at ways to fund employee parking through permits, you know, lower cost permits or other benefits. And other cities that have used parking benefit districts have provided such things as transit passes or bike share membership. So, you know, there are a lot of potential possibilities with embarking on a parking benefits district. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And the photo on the right, this is an example, these large potted plants on Milvia. I wanted to share this picture because it's an example of what we might be able to do if we had a little bit of revenue coming in through a parking revenue district. You know, we might choose to install some planters or other, you know, beautification concepts. The possibilities are really endless. So let me stop there. We're at 5:45, so I've kept to my agenda time. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation. I see folks have already put questions and comments into the chat. So let me, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.
Actually, there are 3 big credit bureaus.
And oh, someone could mute that, mute their background. Okay, thank you so much. So let me just take a moment to begin to look through your questions. And if you prefer not to write your question down, you can also raise your hand. And just give me a moment, folks. Let me just scroll through here. Okay, so I want to take a moment. Caroline is asking, you know, what will actually happen? When will the area be cleaned up? Caroline, I don't know if you had an opportunity to hear my full presentation. I don't even personally have the timeline right now, but it is something that our homeless response team is actively working on. The homeless response team with the city of Berkeley, it's a multi-departmental team. They meet every Friday. So the meeting last Friday was, I think, in large part about the Gilman District Encampments. And when we say top priority, you know, what that means is that all of the available shelter beds that are coming online due to turnover, that those will be prioritized for people in this area. Because, as you know, because of the legal landscape, we have to make that offer of shelter beds at the time that we close an encampment that has been deemed a health and safety risk. So that is what the process is right now, is to identify the shelter beds, to take some kind of enforcement action. And I hope that gives you some understanding of where this is at. And let me just say, to give you even more insight, we had an individual who was in another part of District 1, and it was deemed an issue that needed to be resolved. And it did take a few weeks for that person to get a shelter offer that was workable, and for that neighborhood to get relief. So I want to, that's not exactly what could happen here, but I hope it gives you a sense of what you could expect. So I'm going to jump to a hand raised. And Beth, do you know if Todd or I wasn't tracking if Todd or Christina raised their hand first? Oh, I think actually Michael raised his hand first.
Michael, I was
I
gonna
wanna make
say.
sure we go in order to the extent that we are tracking. So Michael, please go ahead.
Thanks, Councilwoman, and thanks, Beth, too, for communicating with us and putting this together and helping us understand this. So a couple, observations. I'm a professor at Cal. I teach on urban austerity and urban planning and environmental justice. So I know this intimately, theoretically, and I live in the Gilman area. So I live it vividly every day as well. So a couple of things, right? I think, so the legal standpoint or the legal interpretation is that this is a public health and safety concern. And I think that's worth thinking about, right? Because if that is the case, if that's how the city wants to respond to this, then I think the city needs to reach out to the state, right? Because it's the state that handles public health. Municipalities historically have not done a very good job at that. They don't have the resources. And so if we are, and if the legal folks at the city are interpreting that way, then I think the way to address it, the way to have resources here is to actually work with the state. And there are programs right now that are well-funded because of the surplus that we could tap into. So I don't know if Beth has the time or someone has the time, but I really think that's the networks that we need to start to bring in as we think about this. So that's the kind of long-term piece here. In terms of the short term, the other thing, what strikes me as when I walk down Gilman, when we walk our dog and young kids in the area, is that this district is seen as a thoroughfare, right? So when I'm driving, cars are flying by me, right? With the double yellow line on 6th. I mean, that's how fast people are going on 6 these days. And so we have to change, I think, the identity of this area. It can't be seen as a thoroughfare anymore, right? I have people ripping through Jones Street. And I never see, no offense to police officers, but I never see anyone sitting up or I never see a speeding sign, or I never see anyone being pulled over in this area for speeding. And people speed 9 times out of 10 here. So it's become a dangerous place to live in all sorts of things. And we're not finding needles and defecation and all those other things. We're also watching where we have to walk in the neighborhood. So I think that's part of this has to get thought through as well. And, I appreciate the measures, but we really need to think clearly about this, because putting a 4-hour limit in places, and moving vehicles, those spots, when I go and walk around, are now being filled by tents, right? So those spots are opening up, other people are moving in. And then, and I've wrote to Beth, now folks are parking outside our house and running their loud generators all night. And then they leave in the morning, right? So it's this hard problem, and I really appreciate the efforts, but I really think we need to think more deeply about this. So thank you. I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Michael. I just want to briefly touch on some of what you mentioned and just say, in terms of state resources, I didn't want to overwhelm you all with a really long presentation, but definitely I want to, maybe in my next newsletter, I can communicate more about some of the long-term solutions both the city and the state are making. I'll just mention one example, the Project Home Key model. Some of you may be familiar with. This is a statewide effort to support cities and affordable housing developers in converting hotels and motels into permanent supportive housing for formerly homeless individuals. And the city of Berkeley submitted a Project Home Key application. Well, actually, I don't think we submitted it yet. We have till June 22nd to submit. And so our goal is to draw down some of those state resources. The Home Key model, I haven't looked at the governor's budget released on Monday of this week, but previously it has been allocated $1.45 billion. That's billion with a B, but that's going to get used statewide. But that's one of the long-term state investments that's being made to develop more housing, as opposed to shelter for people. You also talked about speeding, and I'm just going to dovetail with one of the questions I saw in the chat about parking enforcement, because I think both the issue of ticketing and enforcement on speeding and the ability to have very robust parking enforcement, that is related to our staffing, our police staffing. And I can tell you, I know that I would love to see us have more parking enforcement officers, because we have more areas than they're able to get to on a single shift. So that is part of why, even though we have the 4-hour signage, which I know has been a mixed success, right? It hasn't worked perfectly, all the efforts that we've made on RVs. The enforcement isn't, there after 4 hours and 1 minute, because our enforcement officers have to go to a lot of different areas, but this area is part of their route. And the speeding, Sergeant Rodriguez could probably add a lot more to this. I think it's a similar issue where our traffic enforcement officers are much fewer than I think we would need to have really robust enforcement of speeding. Sergeant Rodriguez, did you have anything further for that one?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct, council member. Parking enforcement, they can only be so many places at once. They get to what they can, and they're largely complaint driven. So I would encourage each and every one of you to continue to send your complaints, the specific complaints, to our parking and enforcement division. And that's frequently monitored by the administrative staff down there. And then just directly related to our traffic enforcement. So the motorcycle police officers that you'll see out there. Currently, because of retirements and injuries, we only have one available traffic officer right now. Again, I think we're working as quickly as possible to try to supplement and bolster that staffing, but right now the priority is to staff patrol. So obviously those positions have to be pulled to staff patrol. And then, like I mentioned, with injuries, it has left our traffic division and the sworn police officers decimated at this point.
But I do want to say to end this on a positive note, there was a new state law that was signed, it's known as AB 43. We spoke with our transportation division manager about this law on, I think it was Monday. This gives cities like Berkeley the ability to lower speed limits. It gives us greater authority than we previously had. So we're going to be looking at an item, doing a council item that gives our transportation division some guidance and direction to start implementing AB 43. So we could potentially lower the speed limit. Obviously, we need to add more speed limit signs to do that. Speed feedback signs are also really important. And one effort that unfortunately has not been successful at the state level is the concept of what's called speed safety systems, or speeding cameras. That I think we need some support from the state on that. But I think we can take advantage of AB 43 to do some of this work. Okay, let me jump to, I think we did a question in the chat because we talked about parking enforcement. So let me go to Christina. I think you were next.
Hi, yes, thank you for having this meeting. I'm just going to share an observation and then a subsequent question. I live on the west side of San Pablo, and so while not technically Gilman District, the unintended consequences or the externalities of what's happening in the Gilman District affect my immediate neighborhood, in that the increase of vans and RVs. So I want to be very emphatic about the vans as well in this observation, has also now spilled over into my neighborhood, and I have several unhoused people living on my block alone. So my question is, with some of the solutions that are being proposed, how is the city thinking about any unintended consequences of motivating and moving the problem into residential areas such as mine.
Thank you, Christina. And I know you had emailed us about this issue as well. You know, we're really, actually, Beth and I are keeping a close eye on, you know, whether RVs are moving, and we definitely need to pay attention to that. And you know, this 4-hour parking signage, you know, as I was stating to Michael, you know, it's had mixed success in that I think we have reduced the concentration of RVs in that immediate Gilman district, so north of Gilman, west of San Pablo. But it hasn't completely eradicated RVs, and certainly it's totally possible that some may have moved to your street, Christina. So one thing I want to tell everybody, if there is an RV that's parked on your block or on your street for more than 72 hours, you know, we have our 72-hour parking rule that all vehicles have to move every 72 hours. I will say, you know, related to the challenge of enforcing all of our parking and traffic laws, that process is complaint driven, right? So it requires you making the complaint, and you know, email my office too. Michael has emailed us. We've had a lot of back and forth with Michael, but you know, if there's a noisy RV that has a loud generator spilling debris onto the sidewalk, you know, we've all seen that, the human waste bucket, you know, document that, try to get the license plate number if you can, take a photo, let my office know, because we will escalate it and we will work to get you relief. Because, you know, there are some RVs, I have an RV in my neighborhood that is a perfectly fine neighbor. That vehicle moves within less than 72 hours. There's no debris spilling out. I've never seen a human waste bucket, but when those things occur, that gives us the ability to act and enforce. So I hope that's some help to you, Christina, but I'm happy to talk to you more one-on-one to figure out solutions that can work for your block. I want to go to Todd next. I think he had his hand raised. And I will also, and Beth is also monitoring the chat, so we'll try to get to those too. Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rashi. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Beth. Good to hear from everybody. This is a very productive thing to do. I would encourage us to have these more frequently, trying to pack a whole lot into a very small amount of time. Let's see. So, as an architect, I'm pretty clear about ADA laws. So the city is also bound by federal law to keep the sidewalks clear, which is, and the ADA law is a no bullshit law. It has a lot of legal teeth around it. And I did a little bit of research today, I talked to Beth about this, but Los Angeles is being sued under ADA law for non-compliance. They have a woman that got hit by a car because she had to go around an encampment, couldn't use the sidewalk. And and then there's a couple other examples of this happening. So it is a tool that we, maybe not Rashi and Beth or Veronica, but we as Gilman District people can use to force the city's hand. And, you know, cases like this, applying force with empathy is not a bad thing. We don't have to be, you know, overly nice. We have a, you know, we all agree we have a big issue and we need results. So by the way, that's how I got a sidewalk on 8th Street on the west side, which had been dirt for years. I threatened the public works with a ADA lawsuit because they didn't have a sidewalk there, and they began the process. It still took too long, but they began the process. So so we have that. We have of course, I'm worried, Rashi, you know, I'm a shoepista. I'm a huge, you know, we've been talking about a parking district. I am concerned about a parking district. I just don't think we have, I don't think we have the the demand as to make, to use a parking district as a funding mechanism. I think it's more more just simply controlling the RVs. What I'd like to see is using a parking district, not as a funding mechanism, but as a way to dignify recreational vehicle parking. So for instance, a overnight parking, RV parking could be established on a couple of our streets. You pay $12 or $10. The city has to check this, enforcement has to happen. But you get a safe, clean place to park. Maybe it's $8. I don't know. There's a number there where if I'm in a RV and then I'm going to park there. Now, is that going to keep, that will keep away the RVs we don't want. It simply will. You know, the mentally ill and multiple addicted people that are really tough aren't going to pay $8 a night or $12 a night. That's a, but it does help with people that are struggling, that can't afford a ridiculous home and have decided to live but want to live well. So I don't see that happening. I think that would be really worth, and we've talked about this, Rashi. I think that'd be worth exploring. I do think, and I'll just make a couple of more points here. I do think we should have a business improvement district. I mean, we're really going to be serious about raising funds to improve this area and beautify this area. A good business improvement district. I mean, these things have proven to work. My business is here. I'm in the Gilman District. This is my architecture office. I'm happy to pay a monthly fee to you know, I'm the guy out there with the garbage pickup thing, you know, on a weekly basis. I'm happy to you know, to help pay. I do think was it Michael, the first speaker? Michael made some really good points. I am not a fan of this idea of a complaint-driven system. I think that is awful. It puts too much stress and strain on us. I have overcalled the parking people and the pickup people. By the way, the parking people and the trash people are different. So if you've got a homeless person out there with a bunch of trash, you've got two different people to call. It's too much of a burden. The city should have an ombudsman. I can't pronounce that. A person, right? Who is doing what I do, just walking around, seeing what the problems are and organizing different staff people to fix it. It should not, the burden simply should not be on the for systemic problems, reoccurring problems. For the one-off, of course, but these are systemic problems. And Veronica, I really obviously everybody's stressed right now, but I do not see. I have never seen. By the way, I live on Gilman and Evelyn, which is 5 blocks north of the Gilman District. I work right in the center of the Gilman District. So I know this district just like Michael does and others who live and work here. And this is my area, you know, so I've never seen a police pull over a speeder on Gilman Street. Not a single time in 20 years. I mean, that is outrageous to me. And so if it's not police, if you're saying to us, look, we are totally understaffed, we don't have enough, that's a council issue. So this is why I said that there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, because we've got the business improvement district making this place more livable and more beautiful. We've got sort of pedestrian and public and bike safety, right? And then we've got homeless. I mean, if those are sort of the three themes we're talking about here, we can and probably should spend a call, Rashi, on separate those out. I think that would be great. So anyway, that's enough for me. I'll let other people talk.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Todd. I know I appreciate all the comments we're getting, and you know, we can it sounds like there's interest in having this more often, more frequently, but maybe focused on certain topics so that we can have a more robust conversation. So we can definitely do that. And, you know, we'll send out, you know, we have all of your emails, so we will let you know about that. I
That'd be great.
wanted to just acknowledge, Todd, one of the issues you raised, which is concerns about violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act when the sidewalk is not passable. I totally want to acknowledge that that is a real legal risk, although I am not an attorney, so I can't say a lot about it. I can also tell you that the RV dwellers, when they served the city with their lawsuit, they also made ADA claims. And so I know our city attorney is exploring that angle. And although I wasn't on the council when it passed the sidewalk ordinance, it is something that I think is fair and reasonable, that the concept that we all should have access to the public sidewalk, right? Whether I'm in a wheelchair or unsheltered, you know, that everybody needs to be able to use the public space. And I know that there is Todd, you talked about, you know, maybe doing a business improvement district. That's definitely something we've had a lot of discussion and conversation about with some of you all. I do and I see there are a lot of comments about concern about charging for parking. And I just want to assure everybody that the parking benefit district concept, it's really a long-term strategy. And you know, to validate your points, you know, we couldn't install paid parking unless there was a demand for that. And right now, you know, I think we all acknowledge there isn't the demand. The goal is to put an ordinance in place so that as we recover and as the city pays down its bond obligation for the Center Street garage, which won't happen actually until 2026, that we would be in a position to take advantage of the parking demand, if it were there in the future. So I don't want you all to come away from this thinking, oh my gosh, we're dealing with all of these terrible street conditions, and now she's saying she's going to charge us all for parking. So that is not the case. This is something that it's a multi-year effort, looking ahead very long term. And so then you might be wondering, well, what are you doing in the immediate term to beautify this area and clean up this area? I have talked with the city manager, and we're going to explore just asking for general fund so that potentially businesses that want to spend, you know, a grand or a few grand on beautifying the sidewalk in front of their property can potentially apply for funds to do that. We don't have all the details yet, but that was an idea that the city manager and I talked about, so that we could get some investment and get some support to you all, you know, in the next year or so, while we wait for you know, the parking demand that would take several years. So, okay, I want to go to Susie now, who has her hand raised.
Thank you so much for doing this, Rashi. I know you and I have talked about this a little bit, but I just feel like it's worth saying in a larger group that the impacts of these circumstances are really impacting our district in different ways on different blocks. And so each of us is having our own unique experience of what's happening in the Gilman district. But I think the thing that there's just a couple of things I want to just sort of put out there. One is that this is not a residential district. It actually is a business district. And the fact that some people have chosen to live in this district does not automatically turn it into a residential district. What a residential district needs is something different in the way of services than a commercial district does. And unless the city's prepared to put in the services that support a transient residential district, we will continue to have problems. In our part of, in the Harrison Street areas, we are having terrible problems that are public health problems that have to do with rats and theft and sewage problems and food on the streets problems and terrible mental health problems in our district, in our part of the district. And while I understand that may not be impacting everyone else, this is an enormous problem in our area. It is impacting our ability to keep staff. It is our ability to have people feel safe. It is impacting our ability for people to feel that they can leave their bicycles or their cars or anything else on the street and so on. And so I think that this is an issue of enforcement of whatever rules do exist, whatever regulations do exist, and that I so understand that the city and particularly the police department is understaffed at this moment. But I will say I started one business district in this city already, and I resisted it like crazy because I feel like we pay our taxes, we pay our assessments, and that should be paying for these services, and yet we know that that's not enough. And so I've given up my fight on this one, and I will support whether it's a parking district or it's a business improvement district, because we just have to have more help here. But I think that we as a community and as your district have to acknowledge that these impacts are really different from one set of blocks to another, and that we're going to have to figure out a way as a group to come together around some solutions.
Thank you, Susie, for mentioning what you're dealing with on your block. And I'm saying this in front of everyone. I have been repeatedly telling our city manager how serious it has been all over the Gilman district, but particularly in this area with rats. And I just want to reiterate what I said at the beginning. It is a health and safety issue. And so I'm really glad that we have the attention of our homeless response team, and this is the highest priority.
Very grateful.
Because, I have to tell you, some people have the opinion, which I do not share, that this is somehow a low impact area. And I have to fight very hard to argue against that and make sure that it is clear to everyone on our city senior leadership team that if we have a sidewalk ordinance that applies citywide, then we have to enforce it here as well. I know that for folks who live and work in West Berkeley, it often feels like, and it visibly looks like, there is a lack of attention and investment. And I just want you to know that I'm constantly pushing back on, whatever feelings people may have that somehow this doesn't matter that much because it's in the corner of the city. It does matter. It's not fair. And I really hope and expect that we will see some actions as a result of this being the highest priority area to get addressed. Okay, so I want to go to Allie next, who has her hand raised. Or he or she.
Yeah, hi,
okay.
Rosh. Thanks for
hi, Allie.
Beth again. I'm gonna try to talk as fast as I can so we can move on to the next person.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, I have a business on Harrison Street, and I just want to say I am also against paid parking. I, as a person, don't like going to areas where you have to pay for parking. I think it's already hard enough to get people to come here as it is, and then making them pay to park here is just even worse. When the RVs moved, a lot of the RVs moved a couple months ago, they came and they moved the encampments and they pressure washed the street, and I didn't realize. I looked down the street and I could see the sidewalk and I could see down the street, and it was the first time in 3 or 4 years that I've been able to do that, and it was such a sigh of relief. I didn't even notice that I was carrying that weight on my shoulders because I've just been so used to it for so long. And then of course, a week later, the tents move in, and they've been there ever since, and it's just been sprawling. It sprawls, the trash goes out into the street, into the lanes of traffic. And I had to call the city 311, Public Works, city manager's office twice a week for 2 months before someone came to clean the garbage out of the streets. It got to a point where there was dead rats in plain view of my outdoor seating where people are sitting, drinking, and you can see dead rats at the homeless encampment, and the city refused to come out and clean it. It took 2 months. So I don't think anything's going to change anytime soon. I don't think that having a bunch of money in the state that's going to fund housing and all this stuff is going to change anything in the foreseeable future. So I want to see some short-term things. I've tried suggesting to city, to public works, that they put out dumpsters in the encampments. If you're not going to clean them up, at least help keep them clean by providing spaces for them to put their trash so it doesn't go into the street and into the sidewalk. They acted like they hadn't even thought of that when I brought that up. I don't know what's going on, but if you're not going to clean up the people living there, then the people who are living there need somewhere to put their stuff so that it doesn't get in everyone's way. So having dumpsters near sites where we know the encampments aren't going to get cleaned up would give them a place to put their trash, pick it up weekly, sweep the streets where the garbage is weekly. Anything is better than what we have. It's just taking so long to get anything done. And if it's not going to get done, then we need to think about ways to make it cleaner until something will get done, because they're not going anywhere. We have to stay in business. And it's really hard having these conversations with customers about, like, you know, I'm sure you can imagine the conversations because you guys live and have businesses here, but until this problem is going to magically solve itself, like, we need to at least handle the trash and the rats and like the public health safety issues like today, yesterday, like ASAP. So that's my 2 cents. I think that's everything I wanted to say. So thanks for having this meeting.
Thank you so much, Allie, for sharing that. And I just want to say, I just want to validate everything you're saying, that you should not have to deal with what you just described with your customers looking at dead rats and the city not responding for 2 months. And so, you know, if any of you are in that kind of situation where you're trying to get the city's attention, always email me. And Beth and I, we're looking at those emails all the time, because we will forward it to the deputy city manager and say, you know, what is the plan to address this? And I know that's frustrating to have to do that, but I want to tell you that I'm on your side. When I do my drive arounds this area, you know, I just honestly, I just feel embarrassed. You know, it's the same feeling I had with the University Freeway encampments, that, you know, that you know, we just so desperately need an improvement here. And so, you know, I just want you to know my commitment to continue to work until you get that clear sidewalk, Allie, that I guess you had for a few weeks. And I know that, you know, we tried this pilot experiment with offering the safe RV parking and trying the 4-hour signage. And I know that in a lot of ways, it feels like a kind of a failed experiment, because what we got in the place of the RVs is these sprawling encampments. I think that's pretty clear. But, you know, the health and safety hazards are real. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but it is the top priority of this homeless response team. So we will get that, and we'll have to look at, you know, what we can put in place to keep it clean. And Susie and I have had those discussions. I'm hearing it from you, Allie. So I'll have to think more on that. And, you know, maybe we need to have a follow-up meeting just on the strategies and tools we can try to pursue to just keep things clean.
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's try to, I know it's 6:21 and we have hands raised. I want to make sure we get to the remaining hands that are raised. So let's go to Caroline, and then Matthew, and then Dana.
Great, thanks, Rashi. Thanks, Officer Rodriguez. And I know you're working really hard and you're trying to solve this problem, but can we have to think outside the box. It's just picking away at little bits and pieces. And I know there's all sorts of great intent by making this the first priority for the homeless, but I think we honestly can agree it's not going to solve the problem. I would love to hear from you a really honest conversation. What can we do that's different? Because I've owned 1200 Fifth Street for 20 years, and it's just horrifying what's happened to the neighborhood over that time. I mean, it's all of you, I'm sure, but it is mind-boggling, just the state of the neighborhood. It's just, I can't believe that it's come to this. I know you're trying, but really give us some new ideas. What can we do that's really different?
Thank you, Caroline. I'm going to think about that more. And what I think I'll just say now, I think we'll send out another invite maybe for 2 weeks from today or thereabouts, you know, in a couple weeks to talk about that more. You know, how do we come together and think about some out of the box strategies, you know, together that we can pursue. You know, I've had all kinds of, you know, what might seem like crazy ideas, you know, pop into my head, you know, things from like a GoFundMe, you know, to raise funds to help you with some of the cleaning that needs to take place. You know, I definitely want to brainstorm with you and support, you know, whatever it is that we come up with together. So Caroline, I hear you, and let's keep talking about that. Okay, so I think I said Matthew next.
Thank you. I've been working in the Gilman District for the last 8 years, 5-6 days a week. I spend more time there than I do at my own home in El Sobrante. My biggest issue, I understand all the pressure you guys are under. I understand the COVID restrictions. The issue that I see is that we're planning for all these long-term fixes. There's absolutely nothing being done short-term when we have things on the books, laws, and things that can be enforced that are just not being enforced. This is just like graffiti. If people were following up on a weekly basis, even on a monthly basis, getting these people moved on, cleaning up the street and getting them gone, this would be a totally different conversation. Somebody died in their RV a month ago. This is not fair to any of the people who work and live in the Gilman District, and it's absolutely not fair, and it's unacceptable for the people who live in those RVs in the camps. It is disgusting, and I'm trying very hard to temper my frustration, but this is not an issue because of COVID. This has been going on for 7 or 8 years. It is unacceptable, and something needs to be done immediately. 1 week, 2 week, short-term fixes. Get these people moved somewhere else. If they need services, get them services. It is unacceptable. And thank you for putting this together, Rashi. We have to all talk about this. I agree with what Todd said. There should be breakouts and there should be separate, different conversations for the different issues that we have in the district. There's a lot of issues. This is the number one main priority that everybody should be focused on, because nothing else matters until this gets fixed. Nothing. People don't want to come to the district. I have people that don't want to work in the district. I have people that have quit because it is fucking disgusting and it's dangerous. I can't walk my 2-year-old and my 3-year-old around. I don't take them to work anymore. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting. It needs to be fixed. Not in a month, not in a year. We need short-term solutions. I really hope that the police can help us with enforcement. It shouldn't be that hard. I understand the pressures you guys are under. Do something about it, please.
Thank you, Matthew.
Councilmember, if I may,
Yeah.
just interject.
Yes, please, Sergeant Rodriguez, go ahead.
Matthew, I agree, and I know I can speak on behalf of BPD and acknowledging the fact that the conditions in that area are unacceptable. I would 100% agree. And in fact, as a supervisor of the Community Services Bureau and just the Community Services Bureau in general, we were part of those homeless response team meetings. And there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes, many of which you don't get to see, but part of the discussions are exactly trying to identify some of the short-term strategies, because we understand that, well, one, we can't arrest our way out of a problem, but we're also dealing with issues that there's some individuals out there, I would say a vast majority of them are service resistant. You know, no matter how many times we have outreach workers going out there to offer shelter and other, you know, various types of social services and resources, are just absolutely resistant to those, to that assistance, right? So, and we understand the fact that there's criminal activity. So at this point, BPD has kind of reshifted our focus to addressing specifically the criminal activity that is occurring in that particular area, because we know it's rampant, right? We're doing the best that we can in addressing the drug use, the drug dealing, the stolen property, you know, all the other quality of life issues that many of you have been dealing with for a long period of time. So we understand those concerns. And in fact, that was a conversation that we had in the meeting on Friday. that we are currently working on right now. Is it going to be
Thank
an
you.
overnight fix? No, because this problem didn't start overnight, right? It's been kind of a long-term issue. So unfortunately, you're going to have some patience with us as we kind of continue to address and slowly kind of apply pressure and keep that steady pressure of enforcement, and then have that be supplemented by the city services and the outreach and all those various things that we have in our city.
Thank you. And
Absolutely.
I hate to be crass, but if people don't want services, you guys need to arrest them and get them off the street and clean up the street. Years, 7, 8 years. It's crazy. It's crazy
Yeah.
making.
No, and I understand completely. I mean, obviously we're bound by certain laws and the Constitution, right? We can't just arbitrarily arrest someone for being homeless or, camping on the sidewalk. But,
Of course.
we will absolutely enforce, any criminal laws, if and when we see it. So.
Thank you, Sergeant Rodriguez, and thank you, Matthew. I just want you all to know I'm registering everything you're saying, and I think, for our follow-up meeting, I know I talked about cleaning. I mean, we also need to think about what are our very specific, concrete, immediate asks of the city, of the existing resources that we have, our existing police officers, our existing parking enforcement. We need to, have that pressure campaign together, emailing, the city manager, the mayor, the deputy city manager, so I think we need to think concretely about the asks and then make sure that we get these resources so we can, get some relief for what's going on. So let me go to Dana, who I know has been patiently waiting. Go ahead, Dana.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think Matthew expressed the fury of everybody on this call, because I don't think that there's a single person that thinks it's acceptable. I personally I was applauding when he was expressing that, because everybody's being very nice and cordial, but it has gone on too long, and I am vocal, as you know. I send pictures, I complain. And I had a good call with Beth today, and Beth, you can definitely correct me if I'm misrepresenting what we talked about. But my understanding of the immediate plan to do anything is that there is none, and that the city is afraid of the lawsuits. The city is being sued and therefore is unwilling and unable to do anything at this point in the immediate future to get rid of this situation. So your hands are tied, and there's really nothing that can be done because of the fear of lawsuits that are pending.
So I think that isn't accurate, Dana. So I just want to correct that the city is taking action. I know Sergeant Rodriguez says that she's involved in those homeless response team meetings that happen every Friday. I think what Beth may have meant, although I wasn't on your call, so I can't say for sure, but what I want you all to know is that it's a deliberate process because of these legal protections, because of the due process requirement and the very clear requirement based on court precedent to make the shelter offer. If we didn't have to make the shelter offer, then we could do an encampment clearing tomorrow, right? But
we don't have a shelter, though. We don't have anything to offer at this point. So how can you make it go away without having the thing that's needed to make it go away?
So we have shelter beds available. We need to make sure that we have a sufficient number, because the legal requirement is also that you have to offer one for every person. So that's the work that's happening right now. And I didn't get a chance in my presentation to talk about all the shelter beds that the city has developed. I'll just mention one right now. We have the Grayson shelter that was open during the pandemic. That has 50 spots. But most of them are full. What we need to assess is, are there spots available there and elsewhere so that we can make the offer and do the encampment closure. So that's what's happening now. And it's not just the shelters that you may know of that are available. There are things that you don't see, like motel vouchers and other strategies that we can also use that count as a shelter offer. So we just have to make sure that is lined up before an enforcement action can be taken, because of legal precedents that have been set. So I hope that's more clear, that actions are being taken.
It just, yeah, I just feel like it's slow. I feel like we know there's insufficient beds to offer to everybody. So
Yeah.
until we can do that and have that in place, we just sit with our hands tied and do nothing. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that nobody's doing anything. All I'm saying is that this problem that is so urgent and such a health and safety concern, there's nothing that's going to get done in the next week or two, which is what I hear people wanting.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's fair, Dana. I think that it's definitely going to take at least 1 or 2 weeks for that homeless response team to develop their plan. I don't have the exact timeline, and that's why I think we need to meet soon to have another follow-up discussion. But I see Jonathan Backrack has his hand raised, so I want to give Jonathan an opportunity. And thank you, Dana, for your comments. And I know we're past 6:30, but I just want to make sure that we get an opportunity for everyone who has had their hand raised. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'll keep it really quick. Just want to say that, I fell in love with the area. I thought it was like an incredible, diverse and exciting, vibrant area. And I bought a property there, 1207 10th Street. Yeah, it's just gone downhill, and it's super depressing. And it's been really slow to do anything about it. I was encouraged when you guys went in and cleaned up, but it never really got completely cleaned up.
Mhm.
And my experience of being a property owner is that you just got to be vigilant. You got to be there, and you got to, like, when people put up a tent, you got to say, hey, you can't put your tent here. And so I really do think that we have to start with cleaning, just clean slate, we got to start with everyone gone. And then we have to have someone that's there, like a security guard or someone like every day patrolling it. I mean, otherwise it's just going to come back. And that's just the nature of it. And that's been my experience at my property. So I am a fan of business district. I would be willing to pay money to do that. I'm super frustrated. I plan to build an exciting development and, an art center at my property. And, it was all based on this idea that, this would be this kind of lively, inviting, multicultural, multi-use, district. And so it's really just gone to pot. And it's super depressing. So I would love to meet. Thank you for having this meeting. And we really need to get something done. And I would like to be involved in that and help out in any way I can, but it's super important to me.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I want to make a sort of a last call for anyone who has an additional comment or question. If you want to raise your hand, I know we've got lots of comments in the chat, and those are also being archived because we're recording this meeting. So, we'll all have access to those comments and questions. But would anyone else like to raise any issue? Okay, well, I do want to acknowledge that we have Liz Redmond here from our Office of Economic Development. She has been supporting our commercial areas, and so I appreciate her listening in. Some folks are asking who manages this email list, perhaps. We have a number of lists, business owners, and then we also contacted folks who had emailed us, who are residents who live nearby. So I think the Gilman District list, I believe that is managed by Fred. So Jeff, I don't think Fred is on this call, but whoever is interested in getting that list, email us, and then we can connect you to Fred. And we're always very happy to do that. I will just close by adding my email into the chat. And I really do mean that, if there's anything where you feel like you're not getting the attention of the city, where you think that, getting me involved could help you, don't hesitate to do that. And I think we will try to update you as soon as we have more information from the homeless response team. And we will definitely look to schedule something soon to talk more about those out of the box strategies. But I just want to thank you all for coming. We had a really tremendous turnout for this. We were listening really intently to all of your comments and questions and feedback. And we will keep this conversation going. And thank you all again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rocky.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you, Rocky.
Rocky.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Beth.
Okay.
Thank you,
We
Rocky.
have work to do.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Look
Bye.
forward to the next meeting.